All right, so this is wild. I've been looking into this for a really long time. Jim Mars was right. So this article came out on March 12th, 2025. Title from Iraqi News is 27,000 artifacts returned to Iraqi National Museum. So check this out. I'm just going to read it because it's kind of amazing. Baghdad, as part of the remarkable efforts to conserve the country's cultural legacy, the head of the Iraqi State Board of Antiquities and Heritage, Ali Obad Shalagam, and I probably butchered that, so apologies, revealed on Tuesday that 27,000 artifacts have been returned to the Iraqi National Museum. 27,000. In a statement to Iraqi News, Shalgam explained that 7,000 artifacts from the ancient civilization that have significant artistic and cultural value have been recovered from abroad and brought back to the Iraqi National Museum. More than 20,000 items have been seized within Iraq as a result of security operations and are now displayed in the Iraqi National Museum. Iraqi's historic treasures have been subject to ongoing looting, imagine that, during the Iraq War, but we'll get to that, and destruction since the invasion in 2023 from the U.S., a condition aggravated by increasing theft throughout waves of instability. In 2015, the terrorist group ISIS seized several archaeological sites using explosives and bulldozers. Fucking bulldozers, okay? To destroy priceless artifacts. Among the damaged structures was the Bull of Nimrod, an emblem of Assyrian civilization that has stood at the location. So, in recent years, Iraq has undertaken serious attempts to collect and return these lost treasures. In July last year, the Minister of Culture, Tourism, and Antiquities stated that the Iraqi government will continue in its attempts to retrieve artifacts smuggled abroad. The Iraqi Minister of Culture, Tourism, and Antiquities said in June 2023 that over 23,000 items had been recovered from abroad during the preceding 3 years, demonstrating the country's success in retrieving stolen and smuggled antiquities. 2 years before, 17,300 artifacts were recovered from the United States. 17,300 artifacts were in the U.S. and other countries, as well as, here's the good one, the Gilgamesh tablet, which is the first clay tablet on which the epic poem concerning the historical king Gilgamesh, who ruled Sumerian Uruk, which is modern-day Iraq, in 2700 BC, was written. So, earlier as part of the Iraqi efforts to recover its antiquities, 6,000 artifacts that were borrowed from the British Museum 100 years ago. The British Museum was sitting on them for 100 years. They were returned from England. And the Iraqi ministry continues to work on the recovery of smuggled or stolen Iraqi artifacts after terrorism played a role in sabotaging some archaeological sites where many artifacts were stolen, especially from the city of Mosul, where it has important archaeological treasures. So it seems like it's a smash and grab. Jim Mars is going to talk to you a little bit about it right here, and I'm kind of excited to get into this because it's been many years in the making. And Jim Mars was right all along.
So that leads us to the war in Iraq. What was that all about? Well, we were told that Saddam Hussein was about to have a nuclear bomb and launch it at us within 6 weeks, but that proved to be untrue. We were told he had weapons of mass destruction, but that proved to be untrue. We were told, well, we're going to go get his oil, but that was untrue because we ended up getting less than we did before we attacked Iraq. All right, so what was it all about? Well, it was about the attack on Baghdad in April of 2003. Unlike normal military strategy, which is you take an objective, you attack your objective, you consolidate your winnings, pacify the countryside, move on to your next objective, we made a beeline straight for Baghdad. And what happened in Baghdad? The looting of the Iraqi National Museum. Now, what was this all about? I have the news clippings from mainstream media in my files that showed in 1999, 2000, German and French archaeological teams were making amazing new discoveries in Iraq. They even think they found the tomb of Gilgamesh, who up until recently was thought to be a mythical character. But now they begin to realize that there really was such a person. Just as now we're beginning to realize that there are stories of the Anunnaki and these people who visited from another world and could travel around by flight, that these very well may have been based on reality also. So where would they have been bringing the newly found discoveries from the ancient Sumerian cities of Uruk and Ur? They would have brought it to the Iraqi National Museum. More than 700,000 pieces were taken from the museum by a mob, probably hired as cover for a operation that went in there. Museum directors around the world had gotten the Pentagon to pledge that they would protect the Iraqi National Museum because it was the repository of human history. And yet, when the mob showed up, U.S. servicemen were ordered to withdraw, and the mob was allowed to ransack the museum. But Colonel Matthew Bogdanos, Deputy Director of the Joint Interagency Coordination Group, investigated the looting of the Iraqi Museum, and he wrote, "The basement is what we've been calling an inside job. I'll say it forever like a mantra. It is inconceivable to me the basement was breached and items stolen without an intimate knowledge of the museum. From there, about 10,000 pieces were taken. We've only recovered about 650 approximately." So in other words, this was the mob, and the looting was cover for a operation to send operatives in there. They found glass cutters that are not commercially available in Iraq. Some of the guards were suspiciously missing or called in sick. Whoever the thieves were had keys to some of the exhibits and to the basement, and they passed up very expensive looking fakes and went for the stuff in the basement. This was an operation to gain what they thought may have been the ancient ET technology. So who got this ancient ET technology? Well, let's take a review of what we've just seen. First, this knowledge was passed through the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece, and then of course was deposited and stayed in Solomon's temple, when then it was picked up by the Knights Templars, who then created the stonemasons, and then which became Freemasonry, the Rosicrucians, the alchemists, and then the Illuminized Freemasons. These were the Freemasonry in Europe that had gotten infiltrated by the Bavarian Illuminati. Illuminized Freemasons then created the Round Tables, funded by Cecil Rhodes, whose whole idea was to set up a secret society to try to regain North America for the British Empire. Then the Nazis took over, got Solomon's treasure, picked up a lot of the secrets through their magic psychic program. This was then passed to the U.S. military-industrial complex, which is now at the head. The head corporate leaders and banking leaders are usually members of the secret societies like Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, which was an offshoot of the Council on Foreign Relations, and of course the Bilderbergers, which are some of the top industrialists, corporate leaders, media moguls, banking officials who meet once a year, and so secret they don't even have a name. They're just called the Bilderbergers because they were first discovered by the public meeting at a Bilderberg hotel in Holland. To the people who claim that there's a small group of people trying to control the world, is that just conspiracy theory, or is there some facts to back that up? I would point you to a 2011 study by the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. They studied 43,000 multinational corporations, and they found out that these 43,000 corporations are actually controlled by only 1,318 companies, most of these with interlocking directorships and ownerships, and these 1,300 companies are in turn controlled by 147 firms with interlocking control, and that these 147 firms control more than 60% of global revenues. That's an incredible concentration of power. And of these 147 firms, actually the majority of those are controlled by about 20 major banks. So when they say the banks are running the world, there is good evidence to show that this is true. And how do they do that? They do that from little known agencies such as the Exchange Stabilization Fund, It was created in 1934 at the height of the Depression, and it is a little-known office of the U.S. Treasury, which controls the New York Federal Reserve Bank, which in turn is the lead bank for the Federal Reserve System, the 12 banks of the Federal Reserve System. They also have handled the black budget for the CIA, which brings in billions of dollars unaccounted for. They also created the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which has come under criticism for trying to control and buy up the third world countries. The Exchange Stabilization Fund is one of these little interlocking systems where the bankers control everything, and it's been involved in virtually every scandal in American history since its creation in 1934, and that includes the claims of CIA drug smuggling, Iran-Contra, and even the JFK assassination.
So, what did Mars figure out? He figured out that the Iraqi National Museum was looted, everything was taken, the Epic of Gilgamesh was real, and it was about 30 years later when everything was actually returned. What did they discover in that amount of time? Probably everything. They probably decoded the entire library and figured out where everything is, or everything they wanted to know, and gave back either replicas or the actual artifacts they'd taken, or just junk, and kept everything else. But history repeats itself, right? The only thing I can tell you is you gotta keep your eyes on the prize. These people are crazy. Invade a country, steal your national heritage.